Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
You know that feeling when you're like really trying to grasp what's actually going on in the world?
Yeah.
You're scrolling through news, reading reports, and trying to piece it all together.
Absolutely. Wow.
Wow, that's what we do here on the deep dive.
Exactly.
Today we've gone deep into some fascinating stuff.
Yeah, really interesting sources this time.
And our mission is to bring you those key insights and maybe uncover some surprising links between these seemingly separate things.
I think there are going to be some surprises here.
For sure.
We're looking at three main areas.
Okay.
The situation of the Baluch population in Pakistan.
Right.
Then the often turbulent political landscape of Pakistan itself.
The political landscape of Pakistan is always interesting.
And finally,
the
different ways the U.S. is said to exert its influence globally.
Yeah.
So let's dive in.
Let's do it.
It's pretty remarkable how these different threads could all be connected.
Right.
So I think we should begin by examining the concerns about the treatment of the Baluch people in Pakistan, particularly the alleged mistreatment of women and children.
Right.
And it's not just about the human cost, which is obviously hugely significant.
Yeah, of course.
Our source material suggests that this situation could have serious consequences for radicalization and regional stability.
Okay, so drilling down into this first point, the core worry is the mistreatment of the Baluch population.
Yeah.
And the sources are highlighting the impact on women and children. It's not just isolated incidents we're talking about, right?
It's not at all.
The potential consequences seem really broad.
They do. And what's particularly concerning is this direct link being drawn to the potential for radicalization and the fueling of terrorism when a community experiences such widespread mistreatment, especially the most vulnerable members. It creates an environment where extremist ideologies can take root.
So the source is also saying this could lead to political instability.
Yes. That's another major concern highlighted.
Okay.
It could contribute to the growth of resistance movements within Balochistan, and that could really create a cycle of grievance and unrest.
All right, so the sources don't just identify the problem.
Right.
They call for action.
Right. They absolutely do.
The international community needs to pay attention.
Yeah.
And the Pakistani government is being challenged to find this balance between security and upholding the rights of its citizens.
That's right.
Ensuring accountability without making the nation less stable.
Yeah.
That sounds so difficult.
It is a very delicate balancing act, for sure.
So that brings us to the second area we're looking at today.
Okay.
The political dynamics within Pakistan.
Right.
And this is crucial for understanding how these issues on the ground are actually being dealt with.
That's exactly, or not being dealt with.
Potentially.
What we've been given paints a picture of deep-rooted corruption and intense power struggles that have really shaped Pakistan.
Definitely.
The source lays out this tiered narrative of Pakistani politics, which I thought was a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
The first tier focuses on the Pakistan Muslim League-Nawaz.
The PMLN.
The PMLN. Can you give us some historical context there?
Sure.
What's their legacy in terms of governance?
The PMLN is a major force in Pakistani politics, especially in Punjab.
Okay.
And they've been around for a long time. The source details decades of corruption allegations, especially during Nawaz Sharif's time as prime minister.
Oh, yeah?
The usual accusations come up. Nepotism, favoring close associates, financial mismanagement. The Panama Papers scandal is a big one.
Yeah, I remember that.
Offshore holdings exposed.
And it led to Sharif being disqualified.
Wow.
But what's interesting is that the PMLN has held on to power despite these scandals. It makes you think about the accountability in the system.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And for some, it seems like power's a birthright.
Okay, so then we move to tier 2.
Right.
Which is the rise of Imran Khan. And his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party.
The PTI.
The PTI. They position themselves as the alternative.
Exactly.
Promising to end this corruption.
Yeah.
So how did that translate to the 2018 elections?
So there was this huge wave of support for the PTI. People really felt like things could change.
Right.
They won a national victory.
Okay.
The source describes it as a tsunami of support.
Wow.
But there was controversy immediately.
Right.
The PMLN and other parties said there was rigging.
Yeah.
And they accused the military of backing Khan.
Wow.
International observers mostly validated the results.
Okay.
But those accusations really stuck. They sowed a lot of distrust.
Yeah.
And fueled this political polarization.
That's still going on.
Absolutely.
And the PMLN really refused to accept the result.
Yeah, that was a key moment.
Okay, so this takes us to Tier 3.
Right.
Imran Khan's dramatic ousting in April 2022.
Yeah.
The source describes this as a democratic subversion.
Strong words.
So how did he actually get removed?
It raises some serious questions about democracy in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So a no-confidence motion was brought against Khan.
Okay.
The PMLN and other opposition parties were behind it, and they were successful.
So he was removed.
Yeah, Khan kept saying it was an imported government.
Right.
He accused the U.S. and local elites of conspiring against him.
Wow.
The vote was super controversial. There were accusations of horse trading.
Okay.
Lawmakers being offered money to switch sides.
Wow. So like bribes?
Allegedly, by the PMLN.
To get those votes against Khan?
That's right.
Even the Supreme Court's decision to validate the no-confidence vote wasn't unanimous.
Yeah, there were dissenting opinions.
So that further fueled the idea that the people's choice had been overturned.
Exactly, because Khan was still really popular, especially with younger voters.
Yeah.
So many saw his removal as an attack on their vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then Tier 4.
All right.
Which seems to be about the efforts to really sideline the PTI under the new PMLN-led coalition.
Right.
What tactics were they allegedly using during this time?
Well, this is where it gets really worrying for democracy.
Right.
There were several things going on. First, there was a lot of legal action against Khan and other PTI leaders, charges of terrorism, sedition, corruption. And it seemed like a way to silence them and stop the PTI from working.
Yeah.
Then there were the 2024 general elections, which were super disputed. PTI supporters started a vote ban campaign. They were boycotting the election because they thought it was unfair.
Okay.
So turnout was really low.
Right.
But the PMLN still won in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
Wow.
Even though the PTI was barely able to participate.
So that raised questions about potential rigging, manipulation, voter suppression.
Exactly.
And the source also mentions a crackdown on media outlets and journalists seen as sympathetic to the PTI.
Right.
So basically silencing any opposition.
Pretty much.
So is it fair to say that the PMLN's return to power in 2024 was more like a return to how things were before Khan?
Yeah, that's the picture the source is painting.
Where this powerful elite class just sees ordinary citizens as subjects to be governed.
Not as active participants in their own governance.
Yeah.
You got it.
And the core issue is that the voters are being disenfranchised.
Yes.
When a popular party is weakened through these alleged manipulations, it really undermines democracy.
It does, because people lose trust in the system.
The source even compares it to feudal era privilege.
Right.
Saying that this elite basically sees citizens as slaves.
Living their interests.
Which is a scary thought.
It is.
And the source doesn't stop there.
No.
It gives a call to action.
It does.
What does it suggest needs to happen?
Well, the source calls for some big changes.
Okay.
Firstly, electoral reforms.
Okay.
So future elections are free, fair, and transparent.
Right.
It also emphasizes the need for an independent judiciary, free from political interference, to uphold the law.
That makes sense.
And finally, it calls for civil resistance from the citizens themselves to demand accountability and the restoration of their rights.
So are they saying people need to take to the streets?
They're saying people need to make their voices heard.
Wow.
Imran Khan supporters have this slogan.
Yeah.
We will not accept a government imposed on us.
Powerful stuff.
It is.
So the source is framing this as a battle for Pakistan's soul, ending with this question: will the vote ever truly matter, or will Pakistan remain a republic of slaves?
It's pretty bleak.
It is. It really makes you think.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
All right.
To our third area today.
Okay.
The strategies the U.S. is said to use to influence things on a global scale.
Right.
It might seem unrelated,
yeah,
but stick with us. There could be some interesting links here.
I think so.
Maybe even some uncomfortable ones.
Possibly.
So what does the source say
about
the U.S. approach to global influence?
It suggests that the U.S. has a very deliberate and multifaceted strategy.
Right.
It's described as a complex web of control and manipulation.
Wow.
It's broken down into 8 specific areas.
Okay, so let's break those down one by one.
Yeah.
The first one is regime change operations.
Right.
What exactly does the source say about how the U.S. uses this strategy?
The source suggests that the U.S. uses both covert and overt interventions to install governments that are aligned with U.S. interests, things like supporting coups and other actions to destabilize countries. These puppet governments are often kept in place through loyalty agreements or preferential trade deals.
And they can be replaced.
If they don't toe the line,
Wow.
The U.S. wants to control the internal affairs of these countries.
Okay, the second strategy is natural resource control.
Right.
How does the source say the U.S. uses this for global influence?
According to the source, the U.S. tries to control key natural resources. Either directly or through contracts with resource-rich nations.
Right.
So other countries are dependent on the U.S. for energy and minerals. It's a way to reduce competition, secure supplies for themselves, and have leverage on the world stage.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, number 3, acquisition of major companies. Like Google and Udemy. So why is this part of the strategy?
The source argues that buying companies like Google gives the U.S. access to incredible technology and, even more importantly, huge amounts of data.
Right.
This access allows for manipulation.
In what way?
Maybe through incentives like stock options
Nope.
or big government contracts to ensure those companies handle data in a way that benefits the U.S.
Okay, so it's about controlling the flow of information.
Exactly.
And the source specifically mentions Google.
Yeah. They say it's a powerful propaganda tool.
Because of its search algorithms and advertising platform.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next one is military presence strategy.
Okay.
So how does the U.S. use its military to project its influence?
The source says U.S. military involvement in different conflicts, often presented as counterterrorism or peacekeeping, actually serves 2 purposes. One is direct projection of power. The other is cultivating alliances with local partners and governments.
And this military presence then makes it easier to exert influence.
Yeah, through security agreements or relationships with local leaders.
Strategy number 5. Data manipulation and propaganda.
Right.
Which seems connected to acquiring those tech companies.
Definitely.
Can you explain how those 2 work together?
So the source is saying that all that data the U.S. gets through various means, including its influence over tech companies, is used for surveillance. And to influence people. They can identify trends, understand how the public is feeling, and target specific groups with messages. So like tailored propaganda.
Exactly.
And Google is mentioned again as a key way to spread this propaganda and shape public opinion.
To support U.S. interests.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The 6th one is psychological operations and social media influence.
All right.
What are they talking about here?
The U.S. uses a bunch of psychological tactics to make people loyal and sometimes to make them afraid.
Wow.
And they do this more and more through social media and targeted advertising.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So they're shaping people's perceptions and getting them to go along with U.S. policies.
Okay. Next up, long-term control mechanisms.
Right.
How does the source say the U.S. keeps its influence over long periods?
They say it's about alliances and networks. These give the U.S. political support, economic dependence, strategic advantages.
So it's a self-sustaining cycle.
It is.
Okay. Last but not least.
Potential backlash and criticisms.
Right.
Does the source acknowledge any negative consequences?
They do. They say that these tactics can backfire, especially where there's not much oversight or strong opposition to the U.S.
So these strategies aren't foolproof?
No. They can lead to instability and unintended consequences.
Okay. So it sounds like the source is saying U.S. global dominance isn't accidental. It's the result of these 8 strategies all working together.
In a cycle. From influencing regimes to manipulating information, all supported by military power and technology.
That's a pretty clear picture.
It is.
All right.
Yeah.
So now it's time to try and connect these threads.
Right.
We've explored the concerns surrounding the Baluch population in Pakistan, the complex political situation in Pakistan, and these strategies the U.S. allegedly uses for global influence.
Right. Yeah.
So could there be any connections?
That's a great question.
Between these seemingly separate areas?
Yeah. I mean, looking at what we've got, we have to ask if the U.S. involvement in regime change, as mentioned in the third source, could relate to the political instability in Pakistan, the changes in leadership described in the second source.
That's a good point.
Imran Khan being ousted and his accusations of U.S. interference definitely raise questions.
Even though the sources don't confirm a direct link.
That's right.
And what about the internal dynamics in Pakistan? The alleged mistreatment of population?
With the Baluch.
The Baluch.
Yeah.
Could that create vulnerabilities or opportunities for external influence?
Absolutely. A nation dealing with internal divisions, political instability, human rights concerns, might be more open to external pressures.
Makes sense.
When a big chunk of the population feels marginalized, like in Balochistan, and maybe those who supported Khan, it creates openings for others to get involved, maybe openly, maybe more subtly.
So again, maybe no conclusive evidence, but we have to consider these potential connections.
I think so.
So that's our deep dive for today. A concise look at these complex issues based on the sources you gave us. We explored the situation in Balochistan, the ups and downs of Pakistani politics, and those alleged U.S. strategies for global influence. So this leads to a final thought for you. Given the challenges to democracy we've seen and the strategies for global influence, what does it mean for national sovereignty and the power of citizens to shape their own futures?
It's a big question.
It is.
It makes you think about global power and local realities in our interconnected world.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Hopefully this has given you a snapshot of the information in your sources.
And spark some more thinking.
And hopefully you'll keep exploring these topics.
For sure.
Understanding these things is crucial in today's world.
Absolutely.